In the heart of a desolate town stood the ominous Wraithmore Mansion, an abandoned relic of a bygone era. Its once grand facade was now marred by decay and neglect, its windows boarded up like the eyes of a long-forgotten specter. Local lore spoke of the mansion as a cursed place, a house of shadows where unspeakable horrors lurked. The story began when a group of 5 friends, Tom, Emma, Lucas, Sarah, and Jake, decided to explore the mansion, intrigued by its dark reputation. Each was driven by their own curiosity. Tom sought thrills, Emma wanted to prove her bravery, Lucas was in search of adventure, Sarah was a skeptic, and Jake hoped to capture evidence of the supernatural for his YouTube channel. As they approached the mansion, the atmosphere grew heavy with an unsettling silence. The air was thick, almost suffocating, and a cold wind whispered through the barren trees that surrounded the property. The mansion loomed over them, its broken roof and sagging walls casting long shadows that seemed to move and writhe in the dim light of dusk. They entered through the creaking front door, which groaned as if it had not been opened in decades. Inside, the house was a labyrinth of darkness and decay. The grand foyer was adorned with cobwebs, and the once opulent chandelier hung precariously from the ceiling, its crystals dull and encrusted with grime. The floorboards were warped and rotted, giving way with each step and emitting a chorus of groans. Tom, holding a flashlight, led the way into the darkened hallway. The beam of light flickered, casting eerie shadows that danced on the walls. The air was filled with a musty odor, a mix of dampness and something more sinister. As they moved deeper into the mansion, strange noises began to emanate from the walls. Soft whispers, the distant sound of footsteps, and the occasional eerie wail. They decided to split up, each group taking a different part of the mansion. Tom and Emma explored the East Wing, where they found a series of dusty, abandoned rooms filled with old furniture covered in white sheets. The atmosphere was heavy with an oppressive dread. Emma, trying to lighten the mood, joked about the ghost stories, but her laughter was quickly swallowed by the silence. Meanwhile, Lucas and Sarah ventured into the basement, which was even darker and colder than the rest of the house. The stairs down were steep and treacherous, and the air was thick with the smell of rot. At the bottom, they found a large, dank room with old barrels and rusted tools scattered about. As Lucas examined a strange symbol etched into the wall, Sarah noticed something moving in the corner of her eye, a shadowy figure that seemed to dart out of sight whenever she turned to look. Jake wandered through the West Wing, documenting his exploration with a handheld camera. His footage revealed dilapidated rooms filled with broken glass and torn wallpaper. As he entered what appeared to be a once grand library, he noticed the books were all covered in a thick layer of dust, except for one that lay open on a pedestal. The pages were filled with strange symbols and faded ink, and Jake couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. As the evening turned to night, the mansion seemed to come alive with sinister energy. The temperature dropped significantly, and a thick fog rolled in from nowhere, swirling around the mansion's grounds. The friends regrouped in the foyer, feeling an increasing sense of unease. The whispers and faint cries from earlier had become louder, more urgent, as if the house was trying to communicate something. Their attempts to leave were thwarted by the door, which now refused to budge. It was as if the mansion itself was holding them captive. The group's initial excitement turned to fear as they realized they were trapped. The darkness seemed to press in on them, and the house's malevolent presence grew stronger with each passing minute. As the night wore on, they began to experience terrifying phenomena. Doors slammed shut on their own, strange shadows flitted across the walls, and cold spots appeared where none should exist. The mansion seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy, and the air was filled with a cacophony of unsettling sounds. Tom, trying to reassure everyone, suggested they stay together and make a plan to find another way out. They decided to investigate the source of the strange noises, which seemed to be coming from the upper floors. As they climbed the stairs, the sense of dread grew heavier, and the house seemed to become increasingly hostile. On the second floor, they found a long corridor lined with old, faded portraits. The eyes of the figures in the paintings seemed to follow them as they passed. At the end of the corridor was a large, ornate door, slightly ajar. Behind it, they discovered a room filled with old, tattered furniture and an old, dusty mirror. The mirror's surface was covered in grime, but as they approached, it began to clear on its own, revealing a distorted reflection of the room. Suddenly, the temperature dropped sharply, and a ghostly figure appeared in the mirror. A woman with hollow eyes and a mournful expression. She reached out towards them, and a chilling voice whispered through the room, begging for help. The friends were paralyzed with fear as the figure's hand reached through the mirror and began to pull at the edges of the glass, as if trying to escape. The group stumbled back in terror as the ghostly figure began to emerge from the mirror. The woman's spectral form seemed to writhe and twist, her face contorted in a silent scream. Her presence filled the room with an overwhelming sense of despair. The friends scrambled to find an escape, but the house seemed to have other plans. The walls began to close in, the corridors stretching and warping, creating an ever-shifting maze. The friends were separated, each one lost in their own nightmarish reality. Tom and Emma found themselves in a room filled with old, decaying dolls, their glassy eyes staring blankly at them. The dolls seemed to move on their own, their heads turning to follow their every move. Lucas and Sarah ended up in the mansion's attic, where they discovered a large, dusty trunk. Inside, they found a collection of old photographs and documents. One photograph stood out, a family portrait of the mansion's original owners. The faces in the photograph were eerily familiar, their eyes seeming to follow Lucas and Sarah as they examined the image. The documents told a dark story of the mansion's history. It had once been home to a wealthy family, but a series of tragic events had led to their downfall. The family was said to have been cursed, their souls trapped within the house. The documents described strange rituals and dark practices, hinting at a malevolent force that had taken hold of the mansion. Jake, meanwhile, was exploring the library again, trying to make sense of the strange symbols he had found. As he studied the symbols, he began to hear a voice, a deep, guttural growl that seemed to come from the walls themselves. The library's books began to fly off the shelves, and the once quiet room was filled with the sound of roaring flames. Jake tried to escape, but the room seemed to stretch endlessly, the exit forever out of reach. As the night continued, the friends encountered increasingly horrifying apparitions. Emma found herself face to face with the ghostly woman from the mirror, who now roamed the halls, her mournful wails echoing through the mansion. Tom, desperate to reunite with the others, stumbled upon a hidden passage that led to a secret chamber. In the chamber, he discovered a series of old, occult artifacts and a strange ritual circle etched into the floor. The artifacts seemed to pulse with a dark energy, and the air was filled with an oppressive weight. Tom realized that the mansion was not just haunted, it was alive, feeding on the fear and despair of its inhabitants. Meanwhile, Lucas and Sarah were drawn to a hidden door behind a bookshelf in the attic. The door led to a small room with a single, old-fashioned bed. On the bed lay a journal, its pages filled with frantic, illegible scrawls. As they read through the journal, they learned about the family's descent into madness and the dark force that had taken control of their lives. The journal revealed that the mansion had been built on a site of ancient rituals and sacrifices. The family had attempted to harness the dark power for their own gain, but instead, they had become trapped in a cycle of torment. The journal's final entries spoke of a ritual that could potentially break the curse, but it required a great sacrifice. As the friends pieced together the information, they realized that they needed to perform the ritual to escape the mansion's clutches. But with the house actively working against them, it was a race against time. The walls seemed to close in, the shadows grew darker, and the air was thick with the oppressive presence of the mansion's malevolent force. The friends regrouped in the secret chamber, determined to perform the ritual and escape the mansion's grasp. They gathered the occult artifacts and arranged them according to the instructions in the journal. The ritual required precise movements and incantations, but the mansion's interference made it nearly impossible. As they began the ritual, the mansion's malevolent energy intensified. The walls began to pulse with a sickly, green light, and the temperature dropped even further. Ghostly apparitions appeared, their mournful wails blending with the roar of an unseen beast. The mansion seemed to fight back with every ounce of its dark power. Emma, who had been experiencing the most intense manifestations, was overcome by a sense of dread. The ghostly woman from the mirror materialized in front of her, her hollow eyes filled with torment. Emma could feel the weight of the ghost's despair pressing down on her, threatening to crush her spirit. Tom, Emma's closest friend, tried to pull her away, but the mansion seemed to fight back with renewed fury. The ground shook violently, and the walls began to crack, revealing glimpses of the void beyond. The other friends, Lucas, Sarah, and Jake, struggled to keep the ritual going amidst the chaos. The ancient symbols they had drawn on the floor began to glow with an eerie light, but their power seemed to be waning.
Lucas and Sarah, despite their fear, were determined to see the ritual through. They continued to chant the incantations from the journal, their voices trembling but resolute. Jake, trying to maintain his composure, recorded the entire ordeal, his camera capturing the surreal and horrifying events as they unfolded. As the ritual reached its climax, a deafening roar erupted from the mansion. The house seemed to convulse, its walls undulating like the surface of a stormy sea. The temperature plummeted to freezing, and a dense fog rolled in, obscuring everything in sight. Shadows danced and twisted, forming grotesque shapes that seemed to reach out for the friends. The ghostly woman's wails grew louder, blending with the roar of the mansion. Her form began to merge with the shadows, becoming an amorphous, nightmarish entity. Her sorrowful cries were replaced by a chilling, otherworldly laughter that echoed through the house, a sound that seemed to come from the very walls. Tom and Emma, now standing at the heart of the ritual circle, felt an overwhelming sense of dread. The dark force within the mansion seemed to focus all its energy on them, attempting to tear them apart. Tom gripped Emma's hand tightly, trying to offer her comfort as they completed the final incantation. Suddenly, a blinding flash of light erupted from the ritual circle. The mansion shook violently, and the walls began to crumble. The friends were thrown to the ground as the house's malevolent energy was expelled. The ghostly figure of the woman let out one final, anguished cry before being sucked into the void, leaving behind only a faint whisper of her sorrow. The mansion's oppressive atmosphere began to lift, and the shadows receded. The temperature returned to normal, and the fog dissipated. The friends slowly picked themselves up, their bodies aching from the ordeal. The house, once a place of horror, now seemed oddly quiet and still. The front door, which had previously been sealed shut, creaked open. The friends stumbled outside, their faces pale and their spirits exhausted. The first light of dawn was breaking over the horizon, casting a golden hue over the desolate landscape. The mansion, now a mere shell of its former self, stood silent and abandoned. As they made their way back to town, the friends couldn't shake the feeling that they had narrowly escaped a fate worse than death. The mansion had been a place of unimaginable horror, a place where dark forces had taken hold and tormented its inhabitants. But they had managed to break the curse, freeing the trapped souls and dispelling the malevolent presence. Back in town, the story of their ordeal spread quickly. The mansion's reputation as a haunted house became legend, and it was eventually forgotten, left to rot in the annals of history. The friends, forever changed by their experience, vowed never to speak of it again. The horrors they had faced were too great, and the memories too painful. Years later, the mansion was finally demolished, its remains scattered to the wind. The land was cleared, and a new building was erected in its place. But some say that even now, on quiet nights, you can still hear the echoes of the wails and whispers from the House of Shadows, a reminder of the dark forces that once held sway over Wraithmore Mansion. And so, the tale of the haunted house came to an end. leaving behind a legacy of fear and mystery. The friends, though scarred by their encounter, found solace in their escape. They had faced the darkness and emerged victorious, but the shadows of Wraithmore Mansion would forever linger in their memories, a testament to the horrors that once dwelled within its walls. Confronting our deepest fears and facing darkness head on can lead to redemption and freedom, but it requires courage, unity, and a willingness to confront the unknown. The true strength lies not just in overcoming the terror but in understanding and addressing the root of the darkness. Even when we escape physical danger, the psychological scars can linger, reminding us of the need to address our fears and confront the shadows within ourselves.